and welcome back to the Graham Sibbald Podcast with me, Jorja. Today, once again, we are joined by Tim Bunker, who's going to give us an insight into the material changes of uncertainty appeals. We're going to be looking at what the latest updates are in terms of COVID-19 relief and just exactly how the virus continues to impact ratepayers. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode on material change appeals. Welcome to the latest Graham Sibbald podcast. We are joined today once again with Tim Bunker, who is a rating consultant with Graham Sibbald, based within the firm's Edinburgh office. Today we will be discussing material change appeals and the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the value of commercial property. Good morning, Tim. How are you today?
Good morning, Jorja. Yes, I'm good, thanks. Suffering from lockdown, but generally okay.
Aren't we all? Yeah. We're all struggling through it. So I think maybe a good place to start is if you could tell us exactly what a material change appeal is.
Sure. I think before going into detail of it, it's important to appreciate the rating is guided by statutory legislation and case law, which goes back for many, many years. And that basically outlines the timetable of events with regard to rating, outlining the dates for revaluations, which have always happened every 5 years, are going to change to 3 years in the future. But the revaluation that was due for 2022 is actually being moved out a year to 2023 because of the COVID effect. Now, the material change is really an opportunity for ratepayers to appeal the value that's set at a revaluation date if there has been a change in their property. That might be a physical change. It might be that they've demolished part of it. They may have sold off part or let. However, there may be external factors which might include a road closure, street works that have taken effect, building works within the locality which has affected their property, an increase in the sort of typical properties in their area which are vacant, which has maybe affected the locality itself, and a new development that might have opened, which says if you've got a retail property and a new shopping centre opens, then that might affect your business. So those are the physical sort of changes in material change, which happen all the time. However, there are other options whereby the effect of maybe a change within the market can be reflected in the rateable value that has now become a bit historic. Now, the judges have decided in cases over time that the ebb and flow of the property market generally cannot be changed, cannot change rateable value, because that would be reflected in the next revaluation, which is why you have regular revaluations. However, the material change in this case is almost a physical argument in that people are being restricted from actually using their property. It's easy with regard to pubs, hotels or restaurants because they've had to shut their door and the income has stopped as soon as the door is closed. So their ability to pay a rent and thereby their rates is restricted because of that. Now, these subjects got rates relief anyway. Hospitality, retail and leisure were given 100% relief in rates for this whole year, and that will run out in the end of March. However, other sectors of the business, of the market, such as industrials, warehouses, and particularly offices, did not get any relief, and that is really where the argument for material change comes from.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. It's kind of a side to COVID you don't really think about, but now that you've explained it, makes a lot of sense. So say I had a business and I wanted to appeal, how exactly, what is the process behind that and how would it be carried out?
Well, you can appeal within the year that material change has taken place. So the appeal in these cases would go back to the 1st of April 2020. And that obviously is the good timing with regard to the effect of the COVID virus anyway, because closures of businesses due to lockdown began towards the end of March. So the appeal would go back to the 1st of April, as long as it is lodged within this financial year, which is up until the 31st of March 2021. So there's still a couple of months for appeals to be lodged. And if it is done so, then any change that is negotiated would be backdated to last April. So the best thing to do is to get in touch with your agent, who can advise you on that. Hopefully ourselves, Graham Sibbald, who we have lodged thousands of these now, and we can advise you the best process and how to go about it.
So if I had a retail, hospitality or leisure property, which is already subject to rates relief, which you were making distinctions about, should I still appeal, do you think?
Yes, at the moment, it's unclear how long this relief is going to last. The government made a fairly quick decision in applying it from April of last year right through for this financial year. However, they've not stated in England or in Scotland whether this will be extended beyond the 31st of March. Now, in our opinion, well, we're all still under lockdown and it's coming towards the end of January. The effect of this could well last beyond the end of March. We don't know whether we'll be out of lockdown, when that might be. But particularly businesses such as a hotel, restaurant, or a pub, it's going to take them a long, long time to get back to the business levels they were at before. And if this relief is not continued, the only option they'll have is to try and get a reduction in their rateable value, which will then run for the next financial year. So yes, it's definitely worthwhile to protect their interest at this time. It can always be withdrawn at a later date, but if you don't have the appeal in, you've missed the boat.
And I imagine there has been a lot of appeals going through. Is it automatic that I would win an appeal? And how long does the process usually take?
There are, I understand, the last count, in excess of 60,000 appeals throughout Scotland that have been lodged on all different types of properties. As you can imagine, this is causing the assessors some heartache as to how this is being processed. We have actually had a number of meetings now with the Assessors Association, and what they're hopeful of doing is entering into negotiations across the country on specific property sectors. So at the moment, we're in discussion with regard to pubs, hotels and restaurants, and that will then move on to offices and then industrial. So what we hope is that we can reach an overall agreement with the assessors within the next 6 to 9 months, hopefully, because obviously the longer this drags on, the more businesses are going to be into trouble, and they need relief on this basis, particularly those who are not getting relief at the moment, your office occupiers or your industrial or warehouse, who are getting nothing. They need help. So the quicker this is done, the better. Fortunately, the assessors recognise that fact, so we're hopeful that things will move along. So yes, here's hoping.
And in terms of businesses already have any reduction rates or they're looking to impose those, have the government advised how long any reduction in business rates will remain in place?
No. As I just mentioned, the relief ends at the end of March. However, the next question will be, if we can prove that there's a reduction in value, how long will that last? And obviously, at the moment, it's a bit of a chicken and egg because we're in the middle of the pandemic. We're not 100% sure how long this is going to last, or particularly how long it will affect value. So the part of the negotiation is going to be with the assessor. If we can negotiate a reduction, how long will that last? Will it be for a year, 2 years, or we would hope the best scenario might be right up until the next revaluation, but that's not guaranteed. So it's all part of the negotiation process. And at the moment, there's no guarantee there will be a reduction, because we're still analysing all the evidence and factual and contacting clients. So it's a busy time just trying to collate all of this information. Interestingly, down south, the Valuation Office has made an interim proposal on offices of an overall reduction of 25%. Now, that is what they call an interim one. So it's being put out to clients down there at the moment. Not sure if it's going to be fully accepted, or I'm unaware of how long that might stay in place. So that is actually a good step forward for us to use as an example.
And going back to what you were saying earlier about like the material changes, and obviously the impact of COVID is fairly obvious in that people can't get into buildings, as you're saying. So is it usually quite easy to prove that the value of your property has been reduced, or is it usually more difficult?
It is pretty difficult because the rateable value is based on rent. Now, what we're trying to obtain at the moment is situation where rent have either fallen or landlords have reduced the rent because their tenant can no longer afford to pay the existing level. Now, unfortunately, under leases, there is not really the opportunity for tenants to negotiate reductions in rent between rent reviews. So in many cases, it's likely that landlords may have done deals whereby they've just said, we will not collect the next quarter's rent or the next half-yearly rent, and we'll either add that on at the end or we'll just ignore it. So it's not necessarily going to be a question of being able to obtain reductions in rent of market deals. It may be the case of having to go out and try and find scenarios where landlords and tenants have done deals between themselves. So it's going to be quite difficult to collate all of this, but it's ongoing.
Just as everything is at the moment. This is all ongoing. And to finish up, do you have any advice for ratepayers out there that are finding things particularly difficult at the moment?
Yes, I mean, we're in contact with all particular levels of the market, whether it be retail, hospitality, leisure, industrial or office occupiers, and everyone is affected by this. It's not just a one-off. Everyone is suffering. And at different levels. So, I mean, there are very good websites that the Scottish Government has where you can go on to that to check what coronavirus business benefit there might be. So that would be in the form of grants or relief or loans. So you should keep up to date with that because it's a moving feast. Things are changing all the time. Also, contact your property agent to see what's happening within regard to material change appeals, what evidence is out there. Just try and review your occupational costs as much as you can. Fortunately, many landlords that we're aware of are being very understanding about this. And the government is changing relief packages all the time. I mean, you'll see it in the news. The Chancellor is being badgered by various groups to assist here and there. So just keep in touch with the government websites and your surveyor. And I would recommend that you put in a material change of circumstance appeal. There's nothing to lose, but possibly a lot to gain.
Great. Thank you so much for that today, Tim. Thank you, Tim, for your time today. I'm sure we can all agree that this is a highly topical subject and that there will definitely be more updates to follow as things go on. You can view Graham and Sibbald's latest business rates newsletter via their website at www.g-s.co.uk. Thank you so much for listening, stay safe, and we look forward to the next G&S podcast. And remember, you can check out other Graham and Sibbald podcasts on our YouTube channel.